Welcome to the Dadlit Pod, the literary podcast for people who would never be caught dead smoking Marlboro Lights because they're too womanly. Today I'm joined by Rhyan Pike, father, veteran, and horror author. Rhyan has had some wild careers. He served as an animal control officer, a commercial pest control technician, and then he enlisted in the United States Army as a chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear specialist. Since retiring from the Army, Rhyan served as a digital evidence specialist for multiple law enforcement agencies. After discovering horror anthology podcasts such as the No Sleep podcast and the Creepy podcast, Rhyan found a love for horror fiction. He's a proud father of three and lives in East Central Florida and writes whenever time will allow. Ryan's first novel, Barrett's Island, an unforgettable journey of suspense, friendship, and the fight for survival against unseen forces, will be published by Phoenix Voices Publishing later this year. Thank you for coming on the pod, Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Did I capture you? You've led a very interesting life.
Oh yeah,
I summed it all up.
definitely. Yeah, it's been a ride. I'll tell you what. It's when I don't meet people in person and they don't see my face, someone just talking to me, they hear my background, they're like, "Oh, what are you like 45, 50?" I'm like, "Yeah, my knees would say so, but no, I'm 30."
Look, you had a busy opening. I think
Yeah.
everyone can respect that. A busy opening is good. I had a busy opening. The one problem with my busy opening was that it had so much sort of travel and dislocation that I legitimately could not conceive of like having a pet or a girlfriend or a reality because I was just moving around and traveling a lot. So I can definitely empathize with taking the ride in your 20s. So Barrett's Island, tell me about it.
All right. So for me, I Barrett's Island is actually in reference to there's a small town that I grew up in out in California. So there is an actual island that is an actual abandoned military base, and there is local legends surrounding it. Um, there are portions in the book that mention about the island not showing up on maps, not showing up on Google Earth. That's true. That is 100% true. I changed the name of the island because I'd rather people not be trespassing on a federal facility and get hemmed up for that. But the funny part about that book is about 20 to 30% of the events that happen in that book are actually real life experiences of things that I've gone through. And I took that and dramatized it into a full story, but it's been a trip. It was funny because originally the way I started writing was to write short stories for the Creepy podcast. And right off the bat, I got a number of them accepted. And when I went to sit down to write this story, it was intended to be a short story. And then when I started writing it at around like the 20,000 word mark, I'm like, this is not ending anytime soon. So I just let it keep going until the story was told. But it's always weird to me when I write because I kind of go into it with an idea, and I may have just a general idea of what I want to do, or I have a beginning and an end, but everything else along the way, I literally jump in the passenger seat and I have no idea who's driving. I'm just along for the ride.
So you're what the well what the internet would call a pantser.
Yeah.
You're taking the roller coaster with your characters. So you're tackling a creepy island off the coast of California. What sort of themes are you trying to capture? Obviously, set protagonists are in, I imagine, childhood.
So they're right at that cusp of like young adulthood. And
Oh, okay.
so basically the like legends surrounding the island, there are a lot of people say like there's the island's haunted, that there are people like unsavory characters living there, that there's chemicals there, that there are all these different reasons as to why, because the base itself, the actual real base, the military had built it in the Cold War. And that base went up in about a period of like a month and a half, full construction, everything, which is insane for military construction. So they built that entire base, and it wasn't off the coast, it was actually inland on the Delta waters. And the reason that they had built that base was actually as a like reserve area for the naval ships in case there was some sort of attack, they would have additional ships that were harbored backwards. The kicker to the whole thing is once they built that base, it was only a matter of months, and then they shut down operations in a weekend. And hypothetically, certain people may or may not have actually gone on the island and may.
So, so, so certain people, maybe or maybe not, with names starting with Ryan and
Yeah,
ending with Pike, may or may not have been on this
yep.
mysterious island, which is creepy,
So
off the coast of California that doesn't appear on maps.
exactly. So
Yes.
hypothetically, the on the island there are I mean, walking through the buildings and everything, some of them are in absolute pristine shape. There is still like brand new appliances that have like never been taken off like the furniture dollies. Like they're still strapped in everything. There's holes in the ground where they were installing plumbing that they literally just dropped and left. There's toolboxes sitting next to the hole. Like it literally was like grab your stuff and go. We're shutting the base down. So I definitely had an experience myself, or I may have had an experience myself there. uh with specifically seeing people that talked to me and then weren't there, even though there were no cars parked anywhere along the area.
So let's go with haunted place,
Yeah, so
haunted
that's kind of
island.
the kicker to it. And that one doesn't end up showing up in the book. There are some of the other ones that do, but that's like one of the experiences that like I firsthand have been able to see like, hey, there's something off about this place.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's a trip. It's been interesting to write because I really feel like I got to pour a piece of me and like my past into something, and it was interesting how it turned out.
Well, I think that's an interesting question because my horror manuscript that is not being published that I know of, unless someone has something to tell me, also figures into the past. Um, what would you tackle themes of a horror book, or you sit down to write it? What do you try and capture? You say that you've written a book about a haunted island and about, I imagine, between driving and voting youngsters. And what are you trying to capture? What are you trying to say about fear and youth and humanity with your book?
So the funniest part about it is I actually have a very unique take on horror. A lot of
Hmm.
people that go into like the horror genre, they're in it for the thrills. They're in it
Yeah.
for to scare somebody or to get their heart pumping or the blood and gore. I've just like never been one of those people. I see horror like the horror genre instead as a medium to be able to like actually dig into like the psychological aspects of the world. Just all my experiences in the past have given me kind of like a bleak view of humanity and the world. And it's it's been interesting because I use horror as like that medium to be able to express it and connect to people on like a different level. One of my stories that recently went out on the Creepy podcast is what I describe as my most sentimental horror story.
Yeah.
And it is like you listen to it, it is a clear-cut horror story. It meets the genre, like everything about it screams horror story, but it is the only horror story you will probably ever read that makes you cry happy tears.
Oh, that's nice. Well,
So
well, give the audience what is the name of the story
so that
and
one
where can we find it?
Definitely. So the Creepy Podcast is available free to stream on Apple Podcast and Spotify and iCast, I think, or Acast. But it's most of their episodes, they have a paid feed as well that has additional stories, and a few more of my extra ones are in there. But a good number of mine are just on their free feed that anyone can stream free of charge.
Hmm.
Specifically, the one I was mentioning, the story is The Monster Under the Bed. And that's literally what the story, all I had going into that story was the idea of little girl befriends monster under the bed. That's what I went into with, and the rest of it came out on its own.
You just wrote it.
So exactly. So that one is on their they put that episode out on Mother's Day. The title of the episode is Lighter Art.
As they should.
Oh yeah. So the title of the episode's Lighter Art, and then mine's the second in line on that one. And then they do like a special series each year as well that they do like camping themed stories that they call it Creepaway Camp. And if you go to day one of that one of my stories was actually narrated by Shelby Scott from Arrested Development. She was the
Oh,
narrator
fun.
of that story, so that was a kind of a trip too. But I definitely enjoy it. I like writing short stories a lot and I like writing for the podcast, but the project that I've been working on right now has kind of taken my short stories, but it is definitely definitely unique on its own. I'm are you familiar with logical paradoxes?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm taking all these logical paradoxes and turning them from philosophical thought experiments into grounded horror stories.
Nice.
So I've got Schrodinger's cat in there. I've got the crocodile paradox, the liar's paradox. I've got even some mathematical paradoxes like the potato paradox. So that's what I'm working on right now. And then I've been blessed too because the publishing company I signed with, Phoenix Voices Publishing, they jumped on my story and said, "Yeah, we definitely want to publish this," and they've been working on it. And I actually just got an update a couple days ago when I emailed you, but they're saying that my book's going to be out by the end of September, so that'll be
Okay,
on that
great.
end.
So
But yeah,
Barrett's Island in
yep,
September
Barrett's Island will be out.
2025.
Yep, and it should be up for pre-order. They said typically they put the pre-orders out about 2 months prior, but
Hmm.
I just recently got a website up, so I'll give you the website a little bit later. And on there I have like a little subscription box. If you click into it, I'm not one of those people that sends out a ton of promos or anything. I'll let you know when my stuff is coming out, and
Yep.
I'll shoot you guys a free unpublished horror story.
There you go.
So yeah. If you go on my like Twitter X page, one of like the pinned comments at the top of my thing is in regards to like a lot of the marketers, and I'm like, if you are a marketer, you are more than welcome to send me a single message regarding what you're selling. If you choose to be persistent, your level of persistence directly affects my level of pettiness.
You see, you see, believe it or not, I only ever get one message and then I don't respond. And if you don't respond, you just pretend that they don't exist and then they go away. But next week on the pod, an actual book marketer is going to be on the pod. And I'm very excited because she's worked very hard to prove she's a real person and not a Twitter bot, which I'm excited to explore the idea
Definitely.
that they are real. So that's terrific. So you have a short story collection coming out.
Yeah, and that's the cool part about it too is so the Phoenix Voices Publishing. So when I signed on with them, they gave me two options that I could sign either a one-time deal or I could sign with them as an exclusive contract for to be
Hmm.
like one of their staff authors. And the cool part about it is the contract that I signed, unless I decide to terminate the contract at a later time, I bypass acquisitions for all future works. So at this
Oh,
point, I'm
that's
not
nice.
shopping for a publisher. I'm getting to write and actually like express my voice and share my unique take on horror. And like I said, like I'm the one who likes to push the boundaries of horror. I like to go into, like I said, the sentimental horror. I've got some horror stories out there that are horror without death or injury, but will still creep
Hmm.
you out. I like to touch on different emotions. Like I really just use it as kind of a medium to explore the human experience.
So how does that so you're a dad like myself and I write horror as well when I'm not writing other things, but I actually really like writing horror because it's one of the few literary mediums where they let you describe things.
Oh yeah.
Yes. And so when you tell your kids bedtime stories, where on the scarometer are your stories versus what you're writing?
Uh, Somewhere between Disney and the Grimm brothers. So I don't go all the way to decapitations and flaying of skin, but
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea.
but yeah, I definitely my kids know that I definitely lean more to the darker side of things.
Yeah,
Even
the
some of the
spooky side
music
of
I listen
things.
to is have you ever heard of the band The Widow's Bane?
No.
Okay,
Tell
so
me
the
about it.
Widow's Bane, there's a this like indie Americana band out of Boulder, Colorado called the Gasoline Lollipops. The main singer from the Gasoline Lollipops has this like alter ego that he has where he literally dresses up as a zombie, wears a top hat, paints his face white, like he's a full-on zombie. And they sing Americana, but it is like the way he described it in an interview is I think the best way to refer to my music is zombie death polka. And like some of the songs are literally titled like Don't Be Afraid, It's Only Death. And like my kids will listen to that music with me. And my wife has like looked at me sometimes and she's like, this is some like creepy music. And I'm like, it is. It's quite enjoyable, isn't it?
I think it was I dealt with something similar where I was reading Mallerman's Incidents Around the House, which I believe has a bunny on the front of it and like a stuffed bunny. My daughter was like, Daddy, you're reading this book. Why don't you read it to me? And I'm like, sweetie, it's not for you. It's, yeah, but it's got a stuffed bunny on the front of it. And then I'm like, yeah, but it's really not. Okay, okay. Just read a page. Just read a page. And very soon into that book, you discover secret mommy or new mommy or scary mommy, which is the villainous force that's trying to consume this little girl's soul. And my daughter started being like, "Oh, Daddy told me about new mommy" to my wife, and I was like, "No, I didn't. Tell her about any new mommy. You're the only mommy." Okay, but yeah, no. Um,
I think that's
sometimes,
the
well, I'll say sometimes I've gone into sort of a stream of consciousness type of tale. And then I'm like, oh man, that's probably a little dark. Let's hold that back.
so it's funny. Someone asked me a while back, like they listened to one of, I actually had someone who outright had posted on Twitter, and he's like, "How come all these short like stories have no emotion and they just don't hook me?" I'm like, "Because you're not listening to the right ones." So
Hmm.
I gave him like some recommendations of mine of some other people's, and he came back he's like, "How do you guys get so much emotion in such a small story? Like, where's your inspiration come from?" And I'm like, "Trauma." So but I think that's the big thing for me is like I don't consider myself an optimist or a pessimist. I consider myself a pragmatist. I
Yeah.
feel like all I want for my kids, the reason we homeschool our kids, I don't want my kids to have any sort of filtered instruction. I don't want any sort of political leanings, any sort of religious leanings. I want to give my kids, I mean, my kids know I'm religious. My kids know
Hmm.
what my beliefs are on like a political standpoint. But what my goal is to give my kids all of the information and let them see the world for how it is and let them form their opinion and draw their conclusions. Because that's, I guess, the thing for me is I'm perfectly fine having a difference of opinion with someone else as long as you actually have logical reasons to back your opinion.
Yeah. Well, this is interesting because I've had a couple of guests who homeschooled their children. I don't homeschool my children mostly because I'm at work. So it's like I come home and I'm very interested in what my daughter's doing, and I'm kind of jealous of people who are able to get to do it. Mostly because I wonder, right? You almost wonder what's going on. What do you find is the benefit of it?
I think the benefit of it is so one of the big benefits is that the kid gets to work at kind of their own pace. Like there are
Hmm.
times that I'll take and be sitting down with my son to do like math or English, and like you can just tell, like he's sitting there, he's getting kind of antsy, he's jumping up and moving around, and it's like, hey, bud, I can tell you're not focused on schoolwork right now. Let's go to the park. Let's go fishing.
Hmm.
Let's go do something like that. So we can load up, go in the car, anything like that, and come back home, do lunch, and then we'll go sit back down and say, okay, cool, let's pick up where we left off. And it gives that freedom to really like adjust to the kid's needs. Um, in addition to that, too, the thing I've noticed is with like a lot of the public school systems, like you're pretty much limited to the the person who is struggling the most. That's the pace they go at. So even if
Hmm.
you complete things ahead of time, you still have to wait for everyone to get it done. And a lot of times it can lead kids to like not really be getting like the attention they need. And that comes from like firsthand experience. When I was in elementary school, even, I actually got pulled to the principal's office at one point, and my parents were called, and they came over, and my parents thought like I was in trouble and everything, and they said like, "Hey, what's going on?" They're like, "Just so you know, like Ryan's doing his schoolwork, like he's getting good grades, everything's fine on that, but he has an entire like 150-page notebook that is literally filled to the brim with very detailed drawings." I'm like, well, I complete my work and I've got 15 minutes before they finally move on to the next thing. Like, what else am I gonna do? Sit there and twiddle my thumbs?
Yeah.
But like that's what I love about my kids is like there are some of the days that we'll jump into it and my kids will take a couple hours to get everything done. There's other days that for some reason something just clicked for them that day and we can get through all their lessons in 30 minutes.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, if you're doing it, like I'm not gonna.
So where do you find a curriculum for them?
Um,
Right. So that's what I'm interested in. So obviously you when you send a kid to school, you measure them against their peers, and then you have a curriculum established by the teacher. When you're doing it yourself for the first time, where do you get that curriculum from, and how do you manage that?
so actually, if you go online and you search it, there's a bunch of different curriculums. The each state will typically put out kind of like the guidelines of what they expect like a child to know. But
Hmm.
like the that was kind of like the big vetting process for me. We went and looked at like a number of different curriculums and looked at like how they present materials and things. And like some of the ones we looked at, the math, like it made my head hurt. And like I'm good at math. And I went and
Yeah.
looked at it and I'm like, this is so confusing. I am not going to make my child sit through this because I won't sit through this.
Yeah.
So it was kind of that bit of like a vetting process and checking them all on that end, and then also checking the curriculum to see like, hey, this is kind of what they're presenting and how they're presenting it. And that's kind of how we
Hmm.
ended up settling on the one that we settled on was because it really kind of teaches like an appreciation for life and like the beauties of life, but at the same time kind of gives an open view of everything
Yeah.
so that the kid can form their conclusions.
So here's my question, because you say you're good at math. I was not particularly good at math, even though I was able to get to like calculus in high school. To this day, I could not ever explain calculus. I have no idea how any of that worked. Sine, cosine, it didn't stay with me. So if say one of your kids got to like that point where they were like at the cusp of what you felt comfortable teaching them, is there an option for you to place them in like a community college class or a digital program or anything like that that could give that sort of instruction?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's really nothing limiting what we're able to teach the kids. They can go as far as they want to go. Even here, so here in the state of Florida, they even have what they call the personalized education plan program, where you
Hmm.
can basically get like a scholarship that is granted by the state, and it's the tax dollars that would otherwise go to a public school. You get those tax dollars set aside, and you buy whatever you buy for the kid for their education, and you submit it up to the company, and the company reviews it and says, yes, this is education related, or no, it's not, and they reimburse you for your expenses. But the cool part about it is that like they for physical education, they include things like uh fishing rods. They include things like bicycles, rollerblades, things like that, ice skating lessons. So like they're things
Hmm.
you would never get in a public school, that like we can source out and give the kids those opportunities, and it's not costing the state anymore. The funds are just being reallocated. That's the money that would be spent on the kid anyways. And
Yeah, on
then
a per
same thing.
student basis.
Exactly. One of the other things we're doing right now is we have some garden boxes in the backyard right now, and they ask you for like the educational benefit. And we told them like, well, look here, with these garden boxes, we're able to teach them sustainability. We're able to teach them the life cycle and development of plants. We're able to teach them about different families of plants and what distinguishes like a fern from a flower from a fruit and a vegetable. We're able to teach them about the water cycle because they can see the water drip through. They can see as the ground starts to dry out that there's the condensation on the shade screen above it. Like there's just so many opportunities that are there through such a simple task that would like otherwise be overlooked just due to the logistics of incorporating it for like a larger group of people.
Hmm.
And like that's another thing too is like I people have always called me like a walking encyclopedia. For some reason, my brain has like this tendency to retain random knowledge for absolutely no reason, and it just like pops up at the weirdest times. So, but I've actually theorized about that. I took a psychology like uh I took a psychology class in college, but they have you participate in some of the psychological trials. And one of the ones was supposed to be measuring how environment affects like your stress level. And in between each of the tests to like get your mind refocused, they give you like this pattern where you have to like memorize as many numbers as you can, like forward and backward, and it goes all the way up to like 15 until you get it wrong. And I got to the end of the test, and dude's like, to be honest, your like stress level stuff was unremarkable. I mean, it pretty much just fit in line with everything else in the test. Like the part that is really intriguing me is that you got all 15 numbers backwards when I read them forward. He's like, I don't know how. He's like, you're the only person that's done that. And I'm like, dude, I have absolutely no idea. I theorize that like people, from what I have found out, is like people with complex PTSD, the majority of the ones that I've met that have acknowledged that they have complex PTSD tend to have a very, very good memory. I don't know
Hmm.
if the like very specific memory is what causes the complex PTSD or vice versa, but at least I've seen like a correlation between the two. But the reason I bring it up is because I remember this one little snippet from like a sociology class I'd taken way back when, and the history of like the public education system has nothing to do with meeting kids to like a general level of education or anything like that. It was actually developed during the Industrial Revolution, and it was designed to teach kids enough to be functioning cogs in the wheel of society, to give them enough knowledge that they can perform the task they're given without seeking more. And I think that's the big reason why like I'm really liking the homeschooling too, is like my kids, they can go where they want to go. They can take it if they decide they don't like math, as long as they get the base level of the math done and they get where they're supposed to be for like to meet that general education requirement. Beyond that, if they really want to focus on science or something, I'm happy to take my kid, enroll them in classes and give them materials and steer them towards being an ecologist if they want to. Like they really get to follow their dreams and follow their own ambitions rather than being told where they fit in.
It's interesting. So one of the things that that I focus on, especially with this podcast, is the idea of establishing lifelong readers. So the idea of putting children in a position where books are desirable relative to everything. Right? So this is one of the complaints that we see a lot, which is that adult men don't read fiction, for example. Um, what if you were to put together a curriculum, a reading curriculum for your kids? What would you envision would be the essential books on it between the ages of what's your oldest again?
My oldest is about to be 8.
About to be 8. So let's say looking ahead, establishing the curriculum, the age of 8 to 11, what would be some just essential works that are accessible to young people that you think you'd want your kids to read and be engaged with?
So a lot of it actually has been kind of letting her pick which decision she goes in. She actually reads every night. And for being an 8-year-old, she is going through full on chapter books. She's
Hmm.
8, or she's 7 right now. She's not even 8 yet. And she's already made it through 2 Harry Potter books.
Nice.
So like she picks out the ones she likes, and like she really likes it. She likes dragons, she likes the fantasy side. So when she asks for another book, we get her another book. And I think the big thing that I've noticed is that at least when I was growing up, and like a lot of like the books that were like kind of forced on us in public school. I don't know if you've had like a similar experience, but I feel like when you're forced to read a long book, you kind of sit down and like at some point you lose interest, and it's like I'm reading this because it's homework, not like I'm reading this because I want to.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big thing, is that like when we've given our kids books, we kind of give them the book and it's like, hey, read it. Let me know if you like it. And if you don't like it, we don't have to finish it. We can grab a different book.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the big thing about it. But the thing I've noticed is, especially like shorter stories to start out, the thing that really got her hooked on reading was the Magic Treehouse books. Everyone
Yeah.
remembers those. But she liked those because she started getting into them. She's like, I can read an entire book before I go to bed.
Hmm.
So I think that's kind of the big thing, is like to spark that love for reading, is to give them those shorter stories and to get them like really thinking and get their imagination going. And from there, once they start to kind of crave uh that stimulation, that's when you can
Hmm.
start feeding into the bigger books. So, and I think that's the other thing too, is rather than steering her in any specific direction and giving her like, oh, you need to read this genre and this genre and this genre, the the books I read and the books I write are worlds different from what my wife writes, or my wife reads rather.
Yeah.
We are nowhere close to the same genre, but she likes what she likes and I like what I like. And we,
This is the same in my household.
yep.
So what are you reading when you're reading? What is your source of inspiration, literary wise?
Uh, just like stories in general that have influenced my style, or
I would just say, what are you reading? You're a dad. When you get a chance, when you're not writing, what's your go-to genre? Who's your go-to author? Who are you looking forward to?
so like knee-jerk reaction when I go pick up a book, or if I have like a chance and I know I'm going to be like busy or have like a bunch of free time for like a longer time, I'll pick up a
Mm,
Stephen King book. I'll pick up H.P. Lovecraft. I'll pick up a lot of those like bigger horror names. Stephen King I really like a lot because a lot of those start to stem into like the psychological aspect of horror rather than the like I'm not a big fan of jump scares. You know what I mean? Like gore
mhm.
and jump scares. I feel like they're like cheap thrills, and like they work great for some people, and that's fine. I have no problem with people who enjoy all of those things. For me, though, I like the ones that like when I read it and I get to the end of the book, I'm still thinking about it like 2 months down the line and it gives me a nightmare. Then it's like, all right, that was a really well written book. But outside of that, what I end up finding a lot of my like literature consumption actually has been, it's been a blessing to find the those like horror anthology podcasts, because for me, like I can be with the kids at the park, or I can be doing the dishes, or I can be cleaning up around the house, I can be taking care of the pets, and at that time I have these like bone conduction headphones, so my ears are still open to hear everything around me, and I can listen to the stories that are being narrated. So in that, like I've gotten a lot of inspiration from like C.M. Scandreth and uh C.K. Walker, and they're like indie authors that have put stories out, but like some of them are just honestly absolutely brilliant. C.K. Walker has one called Baraska, and it really just like there's so many twists and turns. It when I started listening to it, I felt like the first chapter, I'm like, this is going like a little bit slow. I don't know if it's going to be for me. And then like once it got past the first chapter, like every minute detail ended up like coming back and slapping you later. And that's kind of like where a lot of my stories come from. Like I literally was talking to someone about this earlier, and they were talking like, oh, do you prefer like neat and tidy stories, or do you prefer cliffhanger stories? I'm like, I like to tie up all my loose ends and then throat punch you with something right at the end and not give you the answer to it. I'll make it neat and tidy. I'll get everything fine and dandy, but I will literally present you with a conflict in the last two sentences of my story. So, uh, some of the short stories I've written, maybe I am just a sadist, but some of the short stories I've written, I've literally like started another conflict at the very end, and I've had people ask me like, "Oh, so when are you going to write the sequel to that story?" I'm like, "I'm not. I'm just going to leave you wondering." So,
So, what's the source of delight of creating a story like that? Just from your perspective as an author, because I also I like to incorporate like winks into the books I write. I like to write something into the book that's me sort of winking at the reader saying, I got you type of thing. Or I took you on this ride and you thought it was going here, but really, what does it say about you? What's the thing that gives you such delight from the perspective of a horror short story author in that regard?
so it's funny for me. Any of my writing actually is the reader is kind of my secondary thought. For me, it's more of like an expression of like I said, like that bleak worldview of like the traumas I've seen and stuff like that. It's a real big release that I actually didn't know was possible. My background had nothing at all to do with writing, even in the slightest. And I got into it, and like the people have picked up my stories and liked them, and I'm like, well, man, like I don't know how. Like this is literally me just pouring out like what's inside of me, and it's hard because like what I enjoy about writing the story is if you really even just go back to like fiction in general and like the history of fiction all the way back to like uh the emergence of like the comedies and things like that back in like the Roman era, the whole point of that fiction is to be able to experience emotions that are otherwise unsatisfied in your day-to-day life. And I think that's kind of where I dig into a lot of it is like, yes, I generally use the theme of horror, but and that's influenced by my worldview, but I really like to delve in and touch various different emotions. Like I like to make someone laugh, cry, and hate me all in the same book. I feel like at that point, once I've gotten through that, like you got something out of it. You know what I mean?
No, I understand that. It's sort of I personally I'll write something because it interests me, and then I'll craft it so that it will delight the person who's reading it. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It's the underlying plot and the puzzle to create something new is what's fun for me. And then I say, well, how do I make this fun for everybody else too? And that's where I sort of double down or expand upon it.
definitely. Yeah,
Yes,
I did you get a chance to read that short story I sent you over?
I did. I was interested in that. Mostly the short story. Can you remind me of what the name of it is?
Humility.
Humility, yes. Which was effectively about a guy who no one wanted him to live. Uh,
But the
everyone was
thing
trying
is,
to
so it's
kill
funny
him.
because where it starts out is he feels like he's a burden on the world.
Yes.
And as a result of that, he commits suicide. And what he finds out is his entire understanding of the world is not what he perceived it to be.
Oh yeah. Well, no. Well, to I would state the uh, where are you planning on publishing it?
So that one's actually going to be so all of the stories that I put out on Creepy, and
Yes.
I've got some other ones that are just I haven't submitted them anywhere because they certain ones are like more narratable. There
Yeah.
are other ones that have like way too many speakers. I'm like, I am not going to force a voice actor to sit here and make six different voices. So some of those are just like sitting
Well,
on my computer, but I'm gonna like collate those. I'm working on one more short story for it to push it over like that 100-page mark, and that one's
Yes.
probably going to be coming out in a book in the next like 6 to 8 months.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll say
Yeah.
this about it. I'll say this about it. It's interesting that you say that he feels like a burden and then gets to the other side and determines that everyone viewed him differently. Where I would argue that all of the people did view him as a burden.
No, no, not that they viewed him differently, that he thought differently of them. I
Oh,
think that's what
yes,
I'm saying.
yes. Yeah, I
He had
think
these opinions of people that when he really saw what was behind the curtain, it
yes.
showed him what life was.
Well, anyway, when you get humility um, put up, I'm going to link to it. Make sure we link to it in the podcast so people can read it because it is an interesting read. With I really like short stories with layers of meaning. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
I think ultimately, if you're going to write a short story, the uh, putting layers of meaning into it makes it that much more interesting to me. And short stories in general, I struggle with because I never got into reading them. And now that I think about them, and now that I will sit down and try and write one, I think, man, this is really hard. And the people that do a good job at it and who capture like emotions and complex and layered thinking, similar to your story, humility, it, it's very intentional and very pointed and just very interesting. So, yeah.
Definitely.
So I'll be excited about your upcoming short story book. Do you want to plug your upcoming book, Barrett's Island, and then we'll sign off?
Yeah. If y'all want, I can pull up the book blurb real quick here and I can read it all to y'all. But let's see here. So, where are we at? All right. Can y'all still hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so the book blurb that I have in the back here, Barrett's Island chronicles the tale set in an area surrounded an abandoned naval base shrouded in mystery. Together, Jack Riley and his friends set out to uncover the truth behind the local legends surrounding the island that haunt the residents of Barnesville. Their initial investigation quickly spiraled into a series of chilling encounters with the island's supernatural inhabitant, leaving Jack and his friends with lifelong scars, both physical and psychological. As his life goes on, Jack finds himself crossing paths with the island's inhabitant, despite his efforts to avoid it. Jack's world is turned upside down when his friend Steve and his wife Hannah vanish during an unintended visit. The search for them unveils a tangled web of conspiracies that complicate the already perilous investigation. With each interaction with the island, the stakes rise, and Jack must confront not only the haunting legacy of Barrett's Island, but also the fatal consequences that may come with seeking the truth. As he grapples with fear, loss, and the supernatural, Jack learns that some mysteries are best left untouched, leading to an unforgettable journey of suspense, friendship, and the fight for survival against unseen forces. Will Jack be able to rescue his loved ones, or will the island claim them all? And that's my blurb for it. And I've got a couple quotes too that my publisher ended up having me get set up. So I picked out some key quotes here that she's going to be putting on some promotional material here shortly. So if y'all are interested, I'm happy to give you some of these I felt are the most impactful quotes.
Yeah, by all means.
So I'm pulling them up right now. So one of them is where Jack is talking to his wife. And one of the questions she asked, she said, "Are you kidding me, Jack Riley? What on God's green earth could possibly be so important that you're willing to risk all of this?" And he looks back at her and says, you're worth all of this." And she digs into his pocket and pulls out something special. So there's that quote, there's another quote that I have set here. Whatever was going on here was much more than we ever could have guessed, and much more than we were prepared to handle. Uh, Third quote that I have. Sometimes this one is as the legend is kind of getting explained by people who know a little bit more about it to Jack on the back end. And one of the quotes they give him, sometimes the powers that be on the island see something they like, and they get very upset when someone tries to take it back.
Nice.
So
And so, what's your website? If you could give it with the RH so that everyone can find it.
definitely. So my website is Pike Ryan. So it's PIKERHYAN dot Wixsite, WIXSITE.com/horror.
Nice. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on the pod and all the best with your upcoming novel. And I think we'll all be looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. It was absolutely a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me.